When we talk about health, most people immediately think about the heart, the lungs, or the immune system. Very few pause to consider that the brain, an organ weighing barely 3 pounds, is actually the command center of our entire life. It decides whether we feel joy or sadness, energy or exhaustion, love or indifference. Yet we often don't realize this truth until we're confronted with something life-changing. And the story I want to share with you today begins with someone who lived through exactly that, Emily. Emily is a 23-year-old American girl, fresh out of college with a degree in graphic design from Texas. She was the kind of young adult overflowing with energy, always carrying a sketchbook and a small camera in her bag. Friends often said Emily had a light in her eyes, because she was always bursting with ideas and enthusiasm. But as you know, life doesn't always follow the script we write for it. One spring day, while preparing her portfolio for a design firm, Emily noticed a small lump in her throat. It didn't hurt, but it felt firm. She brushed it off, thinking it was just a swollen lymph node from a cold. But weeks later, the lump remained, and had even grown a bit. At her mother's urging, she went to see a doctor. That was the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The doctor recommended an ultrasound of the thyroid. Emily still remembers every detail: the cold gel on her skin, the steady hum of the machine, and the fleeting worry in the doctor's eyes as he looked at the screen. The biopsy results were not easy to hear: papillary thyroid cancer. Hearing the word cancer felt like being dropped into a dark void. Emily couldn't believe that someone in her early 20s, who ate healthy, exercised regularly, and lived a vibrant life, could have cancer. That night she lay awake, haunted by questions. How long do I have? How many more drawings will I create? Why me? This is the moment I want you to pause and reflect. Imagine being Emily. You're young, full of dreams, and suddenly a doctor tells you that you have cancer. In the days that follow, you're stuck waiting for test results, discussing surgery, talking about lifelong hormone treatment. It feels like your whole world is collapsing. And it's not just your body fighting the disease. Your brain is now waging a war against fear, helplessness, and thousands of unanswered questions. The thyroid removal surgery was successful, but another challenge soon appeared. With her thyroid gone, Emily now had to take replacement hormones for the rest of her life. Until the dosage was stabilized, she was constantly fatigued, but the heavier burden was her mood. Emily's spark was gone. She lost interest in drawing, avoided her friends, and woke up each morning wishing she could just stay in bed. Tears fell onto her unfinished sketches, making her feel as if she had lost herself completely. From a medical perspective, this makes perfect sense. The thyroid regulates metabolism, energy, and directly impacts the brain. When hormones are unbalanced, the brain can spiral into depression. But if you're Emily, medical explanations don't help much. What you feel is the darkness, the invisible wall between you and the life you once had. It was in this struggle that Emily realized something profound. The brain is the most valuable asset we have. You can lose a part of your body. You can replace hormones with medication. But if your brain is trapped in the shadows, everything else loses its meaning. That's why I chose to begin this video with Emily's story. Because in decades of working with patients, I've witnessed hundreds of people just like her, those who appeared to suffer only from a physical illness, but whose brains and emotions carried the deepest wounds. There's a truth that most people never see: mental health and physical health are inseparable. You might have a strong heart and clear lungs, but if your brain is weighed down by depression, life will still feel heavy and bleak. And on the flip side, a resilient mind can sometimes help you overcome physical conditions that doctors once deemed hopeless. Emily's story is not an exception. In the U.S., according to the National Institute of Mental Health, more than 20% of adults experience some form of mental disorder every year, from anxiety and depression to PTSD. The striking part is that many of them don't realize the root of their suffering may lie in the brain itself, an organ neglected, unprotected, or silently damaged. In this video, I want to take you on a journey, from personal stories like Emily's, to scientific research, and finally to practical ways we can protect and nurture the brain. We'll go beyond medication and surgery, exploring lifestyle, nutrition, social connection, and spiritual resilience. I'll share not only medical insights but also personal reflections, lessons I've learned after decades of observing, researching, and walking alongside patients. If you've ever felt exhausted, unmotivated, or weighed down by a sadness you can't explain, I invite you to stay with me until the end of this video. Because sometimes, a single piece of understanding, a new perspective, can change the way you face life. And just like Emily, you may discover how to find the light in your eyes again. As the story unfolds, we meet Emily, a young, lively woman who had just graduated from college, ready to start her first job in the graphic design field she had always dreamed of. But everything changed from just a few subtle signs that most people would easily dismiss. Emily often felt a tightness in her throat, sometimes a small obstruction when swallowing, and there were nights when she lay awake, heart racing. Her friends thought it was nothing more than job stress, and she herself assumed it was due to late nights and too much coffee. That very underestimation allowed the illness to progress silently. One morning, while looking in the mirror, Emily noticed that her neck looked slightly swollen, as if a small lump had formed. At first, she brushed it off, but her gut told her to get it checked. She visited her family doctor in California, where she lived with her parents. After examining her, the doctor recommended a thyroid ultrasound. The scan revealed an unusual nodule, and the next step was a fine needle biopsy to determine its nature. That was when Emily began to feel real fear. This was no longer just work stress. The moment she received the biopsy results became one she would never forget. The doctor walked into the room with a more serious expression than usual, and carefully said, "We found malignant cells. I'm sorry, but you have thyroid cancer." In that instant, Emily felt her world collapse. At 23, no one expects to hear the word cancer, especially someone who ate well, exercised, and had no family history of the disease. Her mind was flooded with endless questions. Why me? How long do I have? Will I lose all my hair during treatment? The worries snowballed into full-blown panic. A few weeks later, Emily was scheduled for a total thyroidectomy. On the day of surgery, she described the feeling as walking into a surreal dream, terrified, yet clinging to hope. The procedure went smoothly. The surgeons successfully removed the tumor. But when she woke up and touched her neck, she felt a long scar. That scar wasn't just a surgical mark, it was a reminder that her body would never be the same again. For many patients, surgery marks the end of a battle and the beginning of recovery. For Emily, it was the start of a new and uncertain chapter. After surgery, Emily began lifelong thyroid hormone replacement. Since her body could no longer produce it naturally, her doctor prescribed levothyroxine to keep her TSH levels within range. At first, she thought taking a pill each day would solve everything, but reality proved far more complicated. Some weeks she felt energized, others she was so fatigued she could barely get out of bed. Some days her mood lifted, only to suddenly plummet into inexplicable sadness. The unpredictable swings left her feeling like a stranger to herself. In my own experience with patients like Emily, I've seen this pattern many times. Thyroid hormones play a central role in regulating metabolism and have a direct impact on the brain. When levels are too low, patients often fall into depression, suffer memory lapses, and feel mentally sluggish. When levels are too high, they may become anxious, restless, and struggle with insomnia. This instability turns recovery into an emotional roller coaster, something endocrinology research has long recognized, but something patients only truly grasp once they live through it. Emily later admitted that one of the hardest parts wasn't the surgery or the pills, but the expectations of those around her. Her parents and friends assumed she was cured once the tumor was gone. They believed time would restore her to normal. Yet inside, Emily felt like she was trapped in a fog, drained of vitality and joy. She tried to go to work, but her mind was heavy, sluggish, unfocused. Each morning, she silently asked herself, "Will I have enough energy to smile today?" From a medical perspective, what Emily experienced is a form of post-cancer crisis that many patients never anticipate. We often think of cancer as a purely physical battle, but in truth, the fiercest struggle often takes place in the mind. Even after treatment, the fear of recurrence, dependence on medication, and hormonal fluctuations can leave survivors in a depression-like state. In fact, studies in the US have shown that thyroid cancer patients report significantly higher rates of depression compared to the general population, an aspect that deserves more attention. To highlight this further, I recall another patient, John, a 45-year-old construction engineer in Texas. After his thyroid surgery, he managed to keep working, but his moods became unpredictable, and he found himself snapping at his family. He described it as living inside my own body but no longer in control. Only after his hormone dose was carefully adjusted and he began psychological counseling did John start to regain balance. His story, like Emily's, proves that recovery from cancer is never just about removing the tumor, it's about rediscovering oneself. The sad truth is that most patients are not mentally prepared for this stage. Medical literature tends to focus on surgery, radiation, and medication, but rarely emphasizes the long-term toll on the brain and emotions. As a physician, I believe educating patients early, letting them know that the mental battle may be harder than the surgery itself, could help them face the challenges with greater resilience. Emily once told me that if she had been warned beforehand, she wouldn't have felt so helpless when reality hit. For Emily, the thyroid shock wasn't just about hearing the word cancer. It was about losing a part of herself, physically and mentally. The scar on her neck may fade with time, but the hormonal instability, the waves of anxiety, and the lingering sadness were wounds that cut deeper. Yet within that pain, Emily slowly realized something vital. To move forward, she needed to treat her brain as a precious organ, worthy of care and healing, not just mask the symptoms with medication. And that realization became the turning point, leading us to the next part of her journey, where Emily began exploring the role of antidepressants and the importance of personalized treatment. After her thyroid surgery, Emily began hormone replacement therapy and was also prescribed Prozac to manage her depression. At first, the medication gave her some relief, but it quickly came with uncomfortable side effects: insomnia, a racing heartbeat, and a strange sense of being disconnected from herself. She realized that taking medication was not as simple as swallow a pill and get better, but rather a journey of trial and error, full of surprises and sometimes disappointment. Clinical reality shows us that there is no single, standard drug for everyone. Prozac can be a lifeline for one patient but a double-edged sword for another. I once met Michael, a software engineer in San Francisco, who responded well to Prozac during the first few months. But then its effects began to wear off. Only after switching to a different class of medication did he truly improve. This reminds us that every brain is its own unique map, and no one prescription fits all. These differences come from biology and genetics. Some people metabolize medication too quickly, lowering its effectiveness. Others metabolize it too slowly, causing higher drug levels in the body and more side effects. That is why modern medicine increasingly emphasizes personalized treatment. Instead of expecting an instant fix, patients need to work patiently with their doctors to find the right regimen, sometimes going through several rounds of trial and error before reaching balance. Even more importantly, medication doesn't just alter brain chemistry, it also shapes how patients perceive themselves. Emily once believed that taking medication meant she had failed, but over time, she came to understand that accepting medical support is not weakness, it's an act of courage. Medication can help clear the fog, but only she could continue walking her path to recovery. The greater lesson from Emily, Michael, and many others is this: mental health cannot be reduced to a single formula. If two people with headaches might both take aspirin, two people with depression may require entirely different treatment paths. Personalization is not some distant concept, it is the key for each person to rediscover their own light. While medication played an important role, Emily soon realized something equally decisive: the presence of her family and friends. After her surgery, there were days when she just wanted to stay in bed and let the world pass by. But it was her mother's patience, sitting by her side, sharing small meals, taking short walks, that became a form of healing no Prozac pill could ever replace. Modern psychology calls this the buffer effect. When people face stress or illness, their social network acts like a cushion, absorbing some of life's impact. I think of Thomas, a 50-year-old thyroid surgery patient. He lived alone, had few friends, and recovered much more slowly than those with family support. Research confirms this. Patients with strong social relationships have up to 30% lower relapse rates of depression. It's not just family, our workplace and community also shape mental health. Emily admitted she once feared her colleagues would see her as weak. But when she opened up honestly, she was met with empathy and support. Her team adjusted her workload so she had time for medical checkups and rest. What once made her feel different gradually transformed into a renewed sense that she was still valuable, still part of a team. The lesson here is clear. Recovery is never a solitary journey. We need medication, we need doctors, but above all, we need other hands to hold us in our most fragile moments. The strength of family and community cannot be measured in milligrams, yet it forms the solid foundation patients need to keep moving forward. After stabilizing with medication and emotional support, Emily began to think about how she could actively take control of her own health. She realized that relying on pills alone would never be enough. So, she started with small changes, a 20-minute walk every morning, cutting back on afternoon coffee, and sticking to an earlier bedtime. Strangely enough, within just a few weeks, her energy levels felt completely different. Modern science clearly shows that moderate physical activity boosts serotonin and endorphins, the body's natural happiness hormones. A Harvard University study found that brisk walking for just 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, can reduce the risk of depression by up to 26%. That's a result few medications can match without the support of lifestyle changes. Beyond exercise, nutrition plays an equally vital role. Emily once relied on processed, grab-and-go meals, but after some research, she shifted toward fresh foods rich in omega-3s and leafy greens. These changes didn't just lift her mood, they also helped her manage her weight, which is often a major challenge for patients on thyroid hormone replacement. I recall James, a 40-year-old thyroid surgery patient, who adopted the Mediterranean diet. It helped him maintain a healthy weight and significantly improved his sleep quality. The final habit, just as important, was stress management. Emily began practicing deep breathing and meditating for 10 minutes before bed. At first, she doubted it would make any difference. But gradually, the calmer mind allowed her to sleep more deeply and reduced her nightmares. It was proof that simple techniques, if practiced consistently, can bring far greater benefits than we might expect. The key takeaway: sustainable recovery is the synergy of modern medicine and healthy living. Medication can open the first door, but it is the small daily habits that keep that door open wide. As her health gradually stabilized, Emily began to ask herself, what have I truly learned from this experience? In the past, she had cared mostly about her career and appearance, but illness forced her to look deeper into what really matters in life. Strangely enough, within her pain, she discovered a kind of growth she never imagined possible. Psychologists often call this post-traumatic growth, the positive transformation that can follow hardship. People who endure major crises sometimes find their lives feel more meaningful, their relationships deeper, and their sense of gratitude stronger. Emily began keeping an emotional journal, recording not only her worst days but also small moments of peace. That habit helped her realize that the value of life doesn't lie in avoiding difficulties, but in how we move through them. Emily also decided to share her story on a thyroid patient support forum. To her surprise, she received hundreds of thank you messages from others facing similar struggles. One single mother wrote, "Reading your story gave me the strength to keep going with my treatment." In that moment, Emily understood something profound. Her suffering was not meaningless. It could serve as a light to guide others through their own darkness. The lesson here is clear. Illness doesn't just take away, sometimes. It also gives back. It may strip away superficial comforts, but in return, it grants a deeper appreciation of health, family, and time itself. Emily was no longer the young woman racing blindly after work and appearances. She had grown into someone who cherished every quiet breath, every simple moment of peace. Looking back at Emily's journey, we see more than a medical story. We see the true strength of the human spirit. From a young woman facing thyroid cancer and depression, she slowly rose again through treatment, lifestyle changes, and the support of her community. Her story is not just her own, it's a reflection of anyone fighting illness or struggling with mental health challenges. The truth is, recovery is never a straight line. There will be days when you feel exhausted, doubtful, or ready to give up. But as Emily showed us, what matters most is not avoiding pain, but choosing to stand up one more time. Sometimes inner strength is simply the decision to take the next small step forward. From a doctor's perspective, medicine and surgery can heal the body, but only mindset and lifestyle can make healing last. Science and spirit must work together. Without one, the recovery journey will never be complete. That's why it's so important to care for your health before it's gone. Start today. Protect your sleep, nurture your body with healthy habits, and give your mind moments of peace. These small daily choices will shape your future well-being. If Emily, at just 23 years old, could turn her pain into power, then so can you. Illness or crisis is not the end of your story, but simply a chapter. And I hope that after watching this video, you'll begin writing your next chapter with resilience, courage, and a heart full of life. If this story inspired you or gave you a new perspective, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more stories about health, healing, and inner strength, and ensures you won't miss the next video. Also, share this with friends or loved ones who might need a little encouragement. Sometimes a single story, arriving at the right time, can change the way someone sees their healing journey. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Remember, your health and your spirit are your greatest treasures. I'll see you again in upcoming videos, where we continue exploring both medical knowledge and stories that truly touch the heart.